Anyway, okay, so Jackie Raschke, I've been with Oak Trace since September of 2020, and I've been in the business 25 years. Went to Northern Illinois University, sociology, gerontology is my major, and just over the years learned a lot about working with people with Alzheimer's disease, and that's really what I fell in love with and my passion. And so I've been managing memory care neighborhoods most of that time. I took a little break about 5 years ago and got a part-time job working in a home care agency where I trained the caregivers, and I developed a 12-hour dementia program. In which I trained the caregivers and then community members. I've also been a support group facilitator through the Alzheimer's Association. I did that for 13 years, but then I continued that over time as well. And then I also, I'm a certified dementia practitioner, so that's basically a course that I took through the National Council of Certified Dementia Practitioners. It wasn't a very hard course to complete. It's just with all my experience, it just added that accreditation a little bit. And then I also like to talk about that I was an excellence in care specialist. So I worked for a company in which I was able to go to communities and evaluate their dementia programs. And I used a lot of that information actually and brought it back to my community. So it was a win-win. But it's really important when you are in a dementia environment that you're safe and that the residents are well taken care of, and that's what I really enjoy about working here at Oak Trace, is that I just really love the commitment and the dedication of all the team members to make residents' lives enjoyable and a great place to live. So it has been a little bit of a challenging with COVID, but I got back into the working in long-term care just about a month before COVID hit. So I would have been safe in my office working part-time, but that's okay because it was scary at first, but I'm glad that I was able to, be a part of helping people who can't always see their loved ones and being a part of that. So it was a challenge, but well worth it to help people, still live the best life they can while our pandemic is going on. So our topic today, Memory Matters, what you can do to make healthier lifestyle choices. So I just like to talk about why should we take care of our brain other than the obvious. There's increasing evidence that Alzheimer's disease begins in the brain many years before we see symptoms. So that is, it's important to note that we can have Alzheimer's manifesting in our brains 20 years before we start to see any symptoms. So I always say it's never too early to start a regimen or doing any kind of program that's going to help with your brain health. Genetics, family history, and aging are things that we cannot change, but making smarter choices to help prevent dementia, we can change. So we have these 3 risk factors that we have nothing we can do about these risk factors, but we do have the choice to live a healthier, better lifestyle. Because when you take care of your brain, you're taking care of your whole body and mental well-being. So again, what's good for the brain is good for the body and vice versa. And then it can help with our future healthcare costs. In 2021, the national cost of caring for people with Alzheimer's and related dementias is projected to reach $355 billion. The healthcare cost to take care of somebody with Alzheimer's disease is generally 3 times greater than that of our general population of older adults. So it is a very expensive disease to have. Because you will be glad you did it while you still remember to. My little joke, sorry. Before I jump into what we can do to prevent the onset of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, as I always like to talk about what is dementia, because a lot of times there's confusion. People say, oh, my mom has Alzheimer's disease, but she doesn't have dementia. And there's just a lot of confusion that goes with the term. So I like to clarify that a little bit. Dementia it describes a set of symptoms. It's not a specific disease. It describes a set of symptoms that is interfering with a person's daily ability to function, such as planning a meal or handling social situations. Every person's level of functioning is different. So it's important to compare where a person is now as opposed to where they were, before any sort of changes were occurring in their brain. But it is important to note that that these changes are generally progressive. But one thing I want to note is that because Alzheimer's is not a disease, when you start to see these changes that are happening in the brain, it's important to go to the doctor. And the doctor will get a history and a physical and do lots of blood work and other types of tests, because what they're trying to do, come back to this one. What they're trying to do is rule out what's called a reversible dementia. So when you see these changes happening in a person's brain, the doctor wants to make sure, are there any recent changes in medication that could be causing the sudden change in a person's lifestyle, where they're now having trouble doing their daily tasks and daily living. Is there a history of alcohol? So when somebody is an alcoholic or consumes vast amounts of alcohol over a period of time, it can actually bring on an alcohol-induced dementia. It's actually called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. And so excessive alcohol can be a sign. So that type of dementia is actually irreversible, but if it's caught early enough and the person stops drinking and changes their lifestyle, then it actually can improve their cognition. Then we have delirium, depression, tumors, metabolic disorders. So if somebody has a thyroid issue or a urinary tract infection, those are all things that a proper testing can detect. Head injury. So if somebody has constant head injuries over time, I'll give you an example. I had a resident that had a significant head injury where he was knocked by a piece of fencing, and it knocked him unconscious, and he actually lived in our memory care neighborhood for several months, but he actually, in time, whatever damage was done to his brain healed, and he was back to normal, living independently again. So sometimes brain injuries can cause these temporary offsets. And then infection or disease can be one of them. Vitamin B deficiency, sleep disorders, people that are having severe trouble sleeping, that can definitely cause some temporary type of dementias. And then nutritional deficiencies and dehydration or overhydration sometimes can cause a temporary type of dementia. So then you go to the doctor and they rule out, nope, it's none of these. And so then they start looking at the possibility of an irreversible dementia. And so Alzheimer's disease is actually the most common form of irreversible dementia, and that's why you hear about it so much, is because it makes up about 60 to 80% of these irreversible dementias. It's an actual disease that's manifesting in your brain, and with all of these irreversible dementias, it is progressive. There is no cure. The person will get worse over time. and death is imminent. One thing that's important to note that generally these dementias that I have listed here, they're not a sudden onset. You're not going to see these drastic changes in somebody's cognition overnight. They're gradual. They tend to be very gradual. And I'm not going to go into the hallmark of each of these, but Alzheimer's disease, plaques and tangles is typically what you see that's manifesting in the brain, where over time, the plaques and tangles are shrinking the brain, and they're also kind of putting globs, if you picture like wads of gum being stuck in your brain, different areas that's prohibiting the proper connections to be taking place among, in your brain. And when you think of your brain affects everything. So your speech, your concentration, your movement. So in time, many people wonder, like, what is it about Alzheimer's that actually causes death? Well, because your brain does control everything in your body, a lot of people that I've taken care of over the years, they lose that ability to eat. They don't want to eat anymore. They don't have that craving to eat, or they don't know how to chew the food anymore, or they have the food in their mouth and they don't know what to do with it. So that can be one of the main causes, is that when you think of what your brain controls, and that's everything, it slowly is shutting down over time. And then, so I'm not going to go into all of these, but when you look at all these other, vascular dementia makes up about 30%, and then we have all these other dementias, and some of them are starting to become a little bit more in the forefront. So over time, we've heard a little bit more about Lewy bodies disease, and we've heard about frontotemporal dementia. These are more common dementias that we're seeing over time. Pick's disease, Parkinson's disease. So about 20 to 30% of people with Parkinson's disease will display dementia type of Alzheimer's in their brain as their Parkinson's progresses. And so there's about 80 different types of these irreversible dementias that have been identified, even as rare as Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is like mad cow disease from eating infected meat, for example. So those are some different rare types of dementias that we don't often see. So next, I just want to talk about some statistics. So 6.2 million Americans currently have Alzheimer's disease. That's projected in 2021, and about 200,000, if not more. I didn't update my statistics on that. It could be more than 200,000 of these 6.2 million Americans have what's called early onset Alzheimer's disease. And that's people can get Alzheimer's disease and related dementias in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So it's becoming more, that number is increasing over time, that we're getting what's called the early onset. And just a little side note, people with early onset, that typically will progress faster. I was actually talking to somebody recently on the phone, and their family member was just, diagnosed about 6 months ago with early onset, and they're like, wow, it's really progressing very quickly. And in my years of working in this industry, I can certainly say that I have seen that myself. So our risk factors, as we talked about, are genetics, age, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the APOE4 gene. So as far as aging, the older we get, that increases our risk. So currently we have 72% of those with dementia are 75 and older currently. 1 in 9 people age 65 and older have Alzheimer's disease. So as you can see, it's about a 1 in 9 chance when you are 65, but as you get older, it increases. There's also a family connection. So if you have, and it's more likely if you have like a sister or a mother or father that has had Alzheimer's disease, that increases your risk as well. If you've had multiple family members, maybe 3 of your sisters, your mom, that drastically increases your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And a little bit about then the APOE4. So the APOE is a gene that what it is, it's a blueprint for a protein that transports cholesterol into the bloodstream. And so we inherit one of those genes from our mother and one of those genes from our father. And there's an APOE2, an APOE3, and an APOE4. So we have 6 different factors of which set of APOEs we get. And what studies have proven over time is that those that have an APOE4 have an increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And it actually can increase your risk about 3 times. People that have 2 sets of the APOE4, it actually can increase your risk by about 8 to 12 times. So about 56 of Americans have 1 copy, and about 11% have 2 copies of this APOE4. On the opposite spectrum, studies have shown that people that have the APOE2 actually have a decreased risk of developing Alzheimer's. It actually lowers your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. So one of the popular things, you know, when people get the ancestry testing, one of the options is to also have your genes tested, and this is actually one of the tests that they can do. There's a lot of controversy out there about how your information may or may not be shared with third parties. So some people choose not to do that on Ancestry.com to find out if they have the predisposition of getting this, if they have the APOE4 or not. But some people can go to their doctor, you can go to your doctor and find out, you know, which gene you have if you want to find out. I just say live your lifestyle as if you have an APOE4 and you'll be, you know, living good. Live a good life, you know, live a life as if you are going to get Alzheimer's someday. And I just want to point out, I get a lot of my information. This is like my Bible, and when it comes out in about February of each year, I get really excited. So this is the 2021 Alzheimer's disease facts and figures. And if you Google that, this PDF will pop up for you. So it's free to anybody, and it's extremely interesting. I use this information to update all of my slides, and it is my favorite resource because it's taking everything from 2020 and it's putting it into this 80-page document with statistics, facts, figures, and all that. So this is a great resource to have. Okay, and then also life expectancy with those with Alzheimer's disease is 8 years, but a person can live over 20 years with this disease. It is actually the 6th, oh no, I'm sorry. It's now the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. It just, it got bumped up from 6 to 7 because of COVID taking a spot earlier. So it's now the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. And it's the sixth leading cause of death for those 65 and older. And 2/3 of those with Alzheimer's disease are women, and people often wonder why. And there's not a clear explanation other than, for one, we live longer, and because age is a risk factor, because women tend to live longer, it increases our risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. So that's one reason. There's also some other studies about the possibility of hormones and how those might play into the prevalence of developing Alzheimer's disease. This, you can see it. Okay, so this is actually an old slide. This is showing over the years, we have seen a decrease. This is an old slide, so I actually wasn't able to upload. It's not available for upload yet. But the percentage of people with breast cancer, that causes of death from 2000 to 2019 has, between deaths from breast cancer, prostate cancer, heart disease, stroke, and HIV, have decreased, as you can see, while Alzheimer's disease has actually increased by, this is an old statistic, 71%. It's actually increased by 145%. So as you can see from this slide, this one I'm telling you about, it's a devastating disease, and it's not going anywhere. It's going to be around for a while, and so we need to see, what we can do to prevent onset for ourselves and those we love.
It's because we're getting rid of those other diseases that it's going up so fast too, right?
Right, and we're living longer, and because age is a risk factor, that's one reason as well. And then we also have the baby boomers, so we've had a huge surplus of older adults in America over the years, and the number is just going to keep increasing. So that's another reason why we're seeing this increase as well.
How many years is it going to be, do they estimate, that the baby boomers will not be the largest population?
I'm not sure. I'll have to investigate that a little bit.
I know too many baby boomers are gone, and I'm not a baby boomer. I was born just before, right
after the baby boomers. Okay. Yeah.
January 1st, 41, and we were at war January 1st, 1945.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So I'm not a baby boomer.
Okay.
My brother, but he's gone.
Oh wow.
He died in 74.
Yeah. Does anybody know the age of? Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure like when that baby boomer generation is, what the dates are between the two.
He also served in Vietnam, so.
Oh, that's okay. Do I need to do microphones? Okay. So now I want to talk about what we do have control over, because this is where we have some sort of power to do something in our lives to make these changes. So the Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention, Intervention, and Care suggests that addressing modifiable risks, which we'll talk about in a minute, might have the power, might be able to prevent or delay up to 40% of dementia cases. Also worth noting, the 2019 World Health Organization has outlined several recommendations to reduce the risk of cognitive decline. So if you wanted to do further research, you can read that, as well as a recent report from the National Academy of Medicine. So there's many different entities out there that are saying the same thing. When we follow these guidelines, we can prevent the onset of Alzheimer's and related dementias. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is brain fitness. So do you know that the #1 preventable risk factor for developing Alzheimer's in the world is education? And when you look at the whole entire world, we are not as educated as we really should be. The more connections you make, the better you are, and the more reserve you will have. So when we look at all our 100 billion brain cells and 100 trillion connections between these brain cells, we want to keep those performing at their maximum for as long as possible. It's important when we're doing brain fitness to look at variety. You don't want to get stuck in a rut. You don't want to just be like, yep, I'm going to do Sudoku every day, and I'm going to be really, I'm going to prevent Alzheimer's from doing the same old every single day. You want to really look at all your different brain functions and really exercise those and work those out as much as possible. There's a lot of great resources. Look at your local library. My library in Brookfield, they have this brain activity program that is a Brookfield member. I can sign on and do these brain exercises. It's a program that's free. So look and see what your library has as far as programs for brain function. Because there's a lot of great programs out there that will exercise all these different areas of your brain. But some of the things that have been found to be beneficial is learning a second language and playing an instrument. Those are two things that have proven the most to help stimulate your brain and prevent the onset of Alzheimer's. When I think of challenges now, so computers frustrate me. There's certain things that really frustrate me, or I've had to do a lot of my own home maintenance, and it's very frustrating. But I look at it now as a great brain challenge, and so it's the way you think about things. I look at things that are a challenge now, and I like bring it on, because now I'm bettering my brain by doing these outside of the box thinking. It's when I have to think hard and it hurts, I'm like, it's working my brain good. So think about it that way. That when you're just doing something that like that's automatic or residual. So when you're doing activities that are like you do it without really thinking, that's not really challenging your brain so much. So you have to really do things that really make you think hard. And like I've always thought bridge is very intimidating, or chess. But I'm like, I think I want to learn that one, how to play both of those someday, because it's a great challenge for the brain. Okay, so so look into different mental exercises. One book that I always enjoy is called Keep Your Brain Alive by Larry Katz, K-A-T-Z, and there's about 83 neurologic exercises that you can do in there. Actually, we're going to do a few of them at the end of our presentation here, so that'll be fun. But it's even challenging your brain to do things that it's normally used to doing, like when we talked about procedural or automatic memory. When you brush your teeth, you brush it with the hand you're used to, do it with your non-dominant hand and see, you know, how you have to think about it and put a little bit more effort into it, to what you're doing. So we have a question.
Like taking medicine, like say high blood pressure medicine or sleeping pills at night, things like that, would that have any effect to?
Well, it can, and that's, you know, when we're talking about the reversible dementias, if you start to see any brain changes as a result of taking any of these medications, it's really important to address that with your doctor. Because that could be what we call a reversible dementia, is that if you're taking a medication and it's causing changes to your everyday activity, then that needs to be addressed with your doctor. So any change in medications needs to be closely monitored. So as far as your body fitness, do you know what the #1 preventable risk factor is in the United States? It's, pardon? Well, in regards to Alzheimer's disease, it's obesity. As Americans, we tend to be overweight. And because we have a lot of overweight Americans, that adds to our risk factor. So when you look at the, what we can control, when we can control our body weight, when we can control our blood pressure, our blood sugar, and our cholesterol, those are 4 very possible preventable things that we can do to prevent Alzheimer's disease. When these 4 things are adequate and in the right ranges, it helps our body immensely. Just one thing that I thought was interesting. Though the brain makes up 2% of our body weight, it consumes 20% of the body's oxygen and supplies. We need a healthy heart to ensure blood is pumped into the brain properly. Many of the factors that increase the risk of cardiovascular disease also increase our risk of dementia, such as smoking and diabetes. There was a study that was done with the Case Western Reserve University where they said that people who are obese between the ages of 40 and 59 are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's than those of a healthy weight. And so when we think about our bodies and exercising, it's really, it's important to find an exercise program that fits your personality, your lifestyle, and your schedule. I went to an Alzheimer's conference, and they said the #1 thing you can do to prevent the onset of Alzheimer's disease is exercise. Exercising at least 30 minutes a day, 6 times a week, 5 to 6 times a week, heart pumping, not just a casual walk, but heart pumping exercise is one of the greatest things that you can do for your body. And then it's also important to have a variety. When we're doing the same activity over and over again, it gets boring and then we quit and we don't want to do it anymore. So make sure that you do a variety. And also, it's not just about cardiovascular weightlifting. Is really a very beneficial activity. Make sure you set goals, because when you set goals for yourself or you find a friend to hold yourself accountable, those are great ways to make sure that you stick to a program. And then just don't get frustrated if you stop. If you stop, start again. I get down on myself because I'm like, oh, it's really hard to etch out an hour every day to do the exercising I want to do. And now I'm like, if I do 20 minutes in the morning and I do 20 minutes in the afternoon and 20 minutes in the evening, that's wonderful. So now I don't get frustrated with not being able to etch out a solid hour. I just fit a little bit here and there into my day, and it makes a difference as well. So it doesn't have to be, the exercise program you do doesn't have to be like all or nothing in one day. It can be spread out throughout the day and still be beneficial. Another thing that exercise does is it sharpens your reaction time and your coordination, and it enhances your self-image, increases blood flow to the brain, and reduces your risk of heart attack, stroke, and diabetes, and it helps improve sleep. So again, it's what's good for the brain is good for the body. I just like this little, I have to walk early in the morning before my brain figures out what I'm doing. So it's good to get started before you're even aware of, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Okay, so then we're going to talk about lifestyle choices, because besides, and we're going to talk about diet in a minute, but yes, exercising your brain and your body are really important, but if there's other lifestyle choices that sometimes we don't consider that we need to. Having adequate sleep is so important. Sleep deprivation leads to forgetfulness, depression, weakened immune system, and problems with concentration. So just keep in mind, I read somewhere that a person that gets less than 6 hours of sleep consistently, night after night, for several years, it can greatly increase your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease later in life, as well as obesity. So for tips for better sleep, it's important to slow your life down. The bed is for sleeping, so ditch the TV in bed. Don't be on your phone. I have a problem with that. Don't be on your phone, looking at your, internet on your phone. Just really, when you're in bed, it's to relax and unwind and then to sleep. Watch what you drink before you go to bed, so limiting alcohol and caffeine. And if you do take naps in the day and you're finding you're not sleeping well at night, then maybe decrease the time that you're napping during the day to see if that helps. So smoking increases your risk of stroke and hypertension. And I say drinking is good. The reason I say that is because there's resveratrol. There's things that are in wine that can be beneficial. There's also things in dark chocolate and light tea, such as white tea and green tea, that can all be very beneficial for the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. So if you are to have a glass of wine, and red wine is more beneficial than white, you want to do it in moderation. So just, like a 4 ounces or 8 ounces for men, 4 ounces for women a day is really what they say is where the benefit lies. And then manage stress. An increase in stress can definitely wreak havoc on your brain over time. So finding things such as yoga and practicing mindfulness and meditation can all be great ways to reduce your stress. There's been a lot of studies on religious activity because to prevent Alzheimer's and related dementia. And I think, and it's not necessarily like belonging to an organized religion. I think a lot of it is just being able to be in the moment and being mindful and present of where you're at right here and right now. I think that's one benefit that religion does, is it helps you connect to something greater than you, and it also is very relaxing and peaceful, and it helps you be in the moment. Because a lot of times we're thinking about things that we have to do in the future and worrying about things that have happened in the past, that we spend so little time being in the moment that it's, I'll tell you, for me, that's the thing that worries me the most, is that my mind is always racing. And so it's something I know that I need to practice and work on, because I find that when I'm in the moment and I'm present and just where I am right here, right now, through meditation or yoga or praying, it's very calming, and it gives your brain a little rest. So I think those are the different reasons why religion is so beneficial. And then even having that, there's a lot of studies that show like the repetition, so doing different kinds of like yoga or meditation or repetitive sounds can also be very relaxing. Another thing that's important to do is protect your head. Okay, so traumatic brain injury is the disruption of normal brain function caused by a blow or a jolt to the head, or penetration to the skull by a foreign object. So when you have concussions, or you think of people in the military that have been involved in bombs exploding nearby, that can actually increase your risk of developing Alzheimer's later in life, especially if you've had multiple concussions. So when you look at sports figures, you're seeing an increase in traumatic brain injury, which can lead to chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a disease that is irreversible, and that's a result of these traumatic brain injuries that have happened earlier in life. So you're seeing a lot of sports figures or military personnel with this CTE because of these blows to the brain. There's growing evidence indicating critical illness and medical encounters, such as hospitalization in older people, can increase their risk long-term for cognitive impairment. Also increases your risk of delirium as well. And then there's also more evidence showing how air pollution might be related to dementia, and when you think about what you're putting on and in and around your body, which leads me into the eating right, that is so important for good brain health. So we certainly want to focus on low cholesterol foods. It's so important to know, there's been research that shows that taking vitamins and supplements or ginkgo biloba, there's not a lot of evidence showing that it can prevent Alzheimer's disease. They really say eating natural foods and eating the right foods is really where you get your benefit. But if you're not able to eat those foods and you're not eating a good diet, I say take the supplements and the vitamins, because you're not going to hurt anything. I actually take CoQ10, which is, there's been a lot of studies that show that that can help with brain function. And I notice when I don't take it, some days are better than others, but I just feel better when I eat healthy, but also taking supplements. For me, I'm not doing anything bad to my body, so it makes me feel better knowing that I'm doing supplements. And it's important, if you are taking vitamins and supplements, quality is key. You don't want to just go to the dollar store and buy some cheapy old vitamin. You want to make sure that you're getting something that's good quality. And then we talked about flavonoids with the resveratrol with the cocoa and the wine and the different white teas that can be beneficial. But we really want to focus on eating foods that are not processed. Eating processed foods is damaging to our gut, and there's a lot of studies that are showing when we have inflammation in our gut, it also causes inflammation in our brain. There's a lot of studies that show when you talk about the lining of the gut, it's very similar to the lining in our brain as well. And so when we have a nice healthy gut from eating foods that are anti-inflammatory, it also is helping reduce inflammation in your brain as well. So focus on foods that are high in antioxidants that can help. So these are just some foods that are high in antioxidants: prunes, beans, berries are really good, kale. When you think of dark green leafy vegetables, artichokes. I was actually doing a gut healing diet, and this is actually, a lot of these foods are on there. I drink kombucha, which is a fermented tea. So eating fermented foods can be beneficial for your gut health. And so that's eating sauerkraut, kimchi, things like that. And just really focusing on prebiotic type of foods like these mentioned here. There's also a lot of benefits in certain fish, so omega-3s. And so when we look at this list, one of the things I learned is what's called a SMASH diet. When you're thinking of fish, think of SMASH. So we have our sardines, our mackerel, our anchovies, ew, uh, salmon, and then herring. Those are 5 very high in omega-3 type of fishes that are good for the brain. And I just like this little slide. It talks about God's pharmacy, and when you think about all these different vegetables that are out there, and you know, they're so beneficial. When you look at they always say carrots are good for your eyes, and when you look at the carrot slice, it looks like the pupil or the iris of a human eye. And when you look at tomatoes, which tomatoes are said to be good for your heart, when you slice one open, you see 4 chambers in the tomato, just like you do in a heart. And so walnuts look like a brain, and eating foods like walnuts can be very beneficial. So when you think about how food looks and how it is beneficial for your body, it's kind of neat when you think about that. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just staying social. I know that Oak Trace for a while was on board with the Masterpiece Living. And when you're living your best life, spiritually, intellectually, physically, and socially, those are 4 aspects that we definitely want to focus on when we think of good brain health. And so socialization is so important. Making sure that we schedule time for friends and family. I really think with COVID, it's been one of the biggest obstacles is because it has shut us off from so many people that I've seen a lot more depression and loneliness and all of that. And I don't think it's been awful for brain function when you lose those connections with family and friends and really just connecting with the outside world. So socialization, maintaining close relationships, there's so many studies that show how that can benefit your brain chemistry. So make sure you get out there and do things. And I mean, Zoom calls are great, but I'm excited that we're starting to open things up now and that we can be more social and connected with the outside world, because that's really so good. And these are just some tips, how to do that. You're all living in a community, so you have some great connections just being here. But schedule time with family and friends, join organizations and clubs. I'm a joiner, so this is easy for me. Work or volunteer, explore the internet when, you can't get out and do things. So stay connected through Facebook or some sort of social media can be helpful as well. And just continue education and take classes. So these are just some little tips on improving your memory. Just paying attention to what you're doing. Try not to do things mindlessly. Creating a memory spot. I always put my keys, my purse, everything in the same place every day. I find that when my house is clean and organized, I'm a happy person that does not get upset or confused because I have things in order and where they need to be, and it just helps me move throughout my day a lot easier. Just etch it in your mind. Just if somebody tells you something and you want to remember it, just, I always do like a little story. Yeah, my computer's been wanting to shut down all day, and I'm like, this is not a good day to have the computer restart. I was working on updating my slides, and okay. And if it helps, write it down and slow it down. So I take notes and I do checklists, and that helps me to not feel like I have to remember everything on my to-do list. And I just find that when I take things slowly, I tend to speed and hurry up. I feel that if I slow things down, it's going to be better for brain function and health. repeat it. So if somebody tells me something and I want to remember it, I will repeat it back to them, and that helps me memorize it. I do that with names, because I'm terrible at names. So if somebody says their name, they're like, "Hi, Janice, it's nice to meet you." That helps me remember. Be organized. As I said, cleanliness and organization is beneficial for good brain health. And then use associations. So I always say, like, if you want to remember my name, I'm a little wacky, so Wacky Jackie. So I'll try to do little associations when I meet somebody. Again, I'm terrible at names, so if I want to remember something, I'll remember something about their name or something that they're wearing to help me with remembering. So just really quickly, wanted to do a couple of fun activities. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of far, but these are a couple of fun brain games. So as you can see, everything up here is all jumbled. So the phenomenal power of the human mind. According to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter what order the letters are in a word. Letters in a word are, the only important thing is that the first and the last letter be the right place. The rest can be a total mess, and you can still read it without a problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. Pretty amazing, huh?
I can read it because I'm dyslexic and was not diagnosed till I was 41 years old.
Oh my gosh, really?
And I went through 16 years of school.
Oh, goodness. Wow. One thing that I feel like they don't do enough in school is to see how are you best going to learn something. And it took me several years, I did very poorly in school to realize I am a visual learner. And that's why I excelled in anatomy classes and things like that, because they were very visual. So again, this is pretty hard to see, but the point of this is to read these, not the actual word, but the color you see. So it's kind of so you wouldn't read orange, but you would read that as green. And that isn't black, it's blue. And that's not green, it's
yellow. I can't see.
It's purple. So these are different fun brain activities you can do, and then the last one is, and I've mastered this from having children, is learning to read upside down. So that's a different challenge you can do. Just do it for fun. Take a book that you're reading and turn it upside down and try to read it. So I would always do that with my kids when I was little, because I would be holding the book, showing them the pictures, but I'm reading upside down. And so that's another fun activity you can do. So we have just a couple minutes left. Are there any questions, anything that I didn't go over that you would want to know? And I did forget one slide that I just want to point out really quickly, because a lot of times people will be like, oh, I really forget things and it's making me nervous. It's really important to talk to your doctor. If you start to see changes that are kind of happening a little bit more progressive than normal, definitely talk to your doctor. But normal forgetting and aging is us losing our keys or forgetting our friends, you know, somebody that we talk to, an acquaintance, like, what is her name again? But if you're forgetting people's names, like, on a regular basis to the point where it's interfering with your day-to-day and you're, like, avoiding people because you're like, oh my gosh, somebody's gonna want to engage with me and talk to me and they're gonna expect me to know answers to things. Or if you're feeling that you're more confused to your time and place, or that you're having visual or spatial deficits, these are things that are more typical of Alzheimer's and related dementias. You're communicating with somebody and you're really having a hard time coming up with words constantly. Again, to the point where it's interfering with your day-to-day. That's when you need to start worrying, and that's when you need to possibly talk to a doctor about what tests and what steps can you take.
You're saying one of those one of those?
Well, usually they say it's usually two areas that are being like two areas of the brain that are being challenged. So like forgetfulness or dementia alone, like forgetting things, that's not dementia, but usually it's when you think of somebody like with Lewy bodies, you don't see the memory loss as much at first. You see more like behaviors, or you're seeing like hallucinations and things like that. So you're starting to see just changes where it's affecting a person day to day. But usually they'll look at two cognitive functions are being affected. But again, if anything's happening that's out of the ordinary, that doesn't seem like, wow, I'm really having a hard time coming up with words, and, I seem to be a little bit more suspicious and paranoid of things that are happening in my life, I'm feeling like somebody's stealing things from me, or I'm just starting to get a little bit more withdrawn from social activities because I'm, depressed, or there's many different things that can be, happening in the brain that goes above and beyond just your normal forgetfulness. So they usually look at two of these areas being affected for it to be considered like a dementia type of situation. Any other questions?
Why is a UTI so related to either dementia? Is it dementia or is it Alzheimer's?
Well, so a urinary tract infection, it's really, what it is, it's something that's happening in your body, an infection. And when you have an infection in your body, it can do many different things. So it can cause the confusion, it can cause fevers, it can cause fatigue. There's many different things that a urinary tract infection can do. But a lot of times, like if I have somebody with dementia, one of my Alzheimer's residents, and they get a UTI, it is going to increase their confusion, and it's usually drastic. And so we're usually like, oh, we're seeing these big changes in this person's cognitive status. Let's test them to see if they have a UTI. So it's not like the two necessarily go hand in hand. It's just that a urinary tract infection is an infection, and when you have an infection, it can do many different things.
Well, there's a lot of bladder syndromes now. They don't call them diseases yet because there is no medication that cures it.
Okay.
The only thing is called interstitial cystitis of the bladder. And the only thing worse is having Botox injected into your bladder.
Oh, no.
And please do not allow any doctor to let you use lidocaine. I go to Loyola and I insist on having them put me in La La Land, okay? And then it's done. I don't feel anything. It does not hurt afterwards.
Oh, wow.
I happened, unfortunately, had a brand new doctor, graduate out of Loyola, who did it in the office, unsanitary, with lidocaine.
Oh, gosh.
And that's what brought my health in.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, it's important to have a good doctor.
Lots of food, too. You said tomatoes are good? Yeah, they are.
Yeah, really any antioxidant. So are there any other questions? Yeah.
What you want to say, but you cannot bring the word.
Yeah, so we all have that tip of the tongue syndrome. I have it all the time, where I can't think of a word or a name. Sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes I'm in a social situation and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. I can't think of a very common word. That's normal aging. What's not normal is when it's interfering with your ability to socialize on a regular basis. Yeah, if it's happening more and more often, then, it's something that it's important to let your doctor know about. Yeah, because, communication can be affected with Alzheimer's. and related, I always say and related diseases, because again, we talk about Alzheimer's disease because it's the most common, but there's all these other diseases that we talked about as well. Thank you so much, and you can call me, or look me up, I'm Jackie.Raschke@Lightspace Community, so if you have additional questions or you need support, you let me know, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.